Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, we find facts and fine-tune figures. Welcome back. In this module, we'll be talking about Medallion architecture. Medallion architecture is a data design pattern used to logically organize data in a lakehouse. It is a multi-layered approach that guarantees atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. The architecture is divided into three zones, which include the bronze, silver and also the gold layer. So on the next slide, I'm going to give us a pictorial representation of what Medallion architecture looks like. So this Medallion architecture is such that the quality of the data increase from these three zones. The first zone being the bronze layer, where you have your raw data, and then the next layer is your silver layer, where your data is actually of improved quality, and of course you now have your gold layer where your data has now been enriched. So from this gold layer now, your data is now available for use either for your Power BI workload or for your machine learning. So whatever the case may be, your data is in the best state for use for any analytical workload. So we are back in our Fabric environment. For this Medallion architecture implementation, we are going to be using both our notebook for the Medallion architecture and also data flow gen 2. So for this purpose, we'll go back into our workspace and then we'll navigate into our workspace, which we know is already our Fabric course. And then right from our workspace, we are going to create our second lakehouse. So to create second lakehouse, we are going to switch to data engineering experience. So once we switch to data engineering experience, then we pick a lakehouse. Then we give our lakehouse a name. So we are going to call it Medallion, Medallion Lakehouse. And then we'll click on create. So those it will make the second lake house we are creating. So once we have this lake house created, then you go to our GitHub repository where you have Medallion architecture. So everything that we need for this project is actually inside this Medallion architecture. So we are going to be using these two notebooks provided in the GitHub repository. So you can download the notebook and then we will use it to ingest our data. But first, let's go back to our Fabric environment. So within Fabric, our lakehouse has been ingested. So we are going to be uploading the file that we need for this Medallion architecture, which is the says that data that is available on the GitHub repository. So this says data right here. So we are going to be ingesting these three data CSV file into our lakehouse. So I'll click on file, then I'll create a new folder. I'll create a new subfolder. Then I'll just call it our bronze layer. I'll call it bronze. Then I'll click on create. So within this new subfolder now, within this new subfolder, I am going to upload the CSV file for the purpose of this project. So I'll click on this, then I'll go to upload, then I'll click on upload file. Then within your own local machine, you can navigate to where you have your sales data. So in my case, I have it here. So 2019, 2020, and 2021. So these are the three files that I want to upload. So I'll click on open. So once these files are uploaded for me, then I can now use the notebook that is provided in that GitHub repository. So this one that we are uploading now is our bronze layer. So you can open the CSV file and look at what the file look like. So this is our bronze layer. So we are going to be working on these files using our notebook to transform it into our silver layer. So I want to inspect this folder now to be sure that I have this CSV file uploaded. So these are the CSV file. So now that I have confirmed that these files have been uploaded, so I'm going to open a new notebook. So once I open a new notebook, it will be attached to this Medallion lakehouse. So I can then go back to my GitHub repository where I can find the resource for this Medallion architecture. So this is the notebook to transform this data to silver layer. So what I will do is that I will copy each and every cell code here in my GitHub repository into the notebook that I created on my Fabric environment. Now I'm using this notebook because it's actually available from the Microsoft documentation. But where it gets interesting is where I'm going to replicate this same Medallion architecture using data flow. Depending on your skill set, if you are proficient using notebook, then it's all good. But if you're also proficient using data flow, especially for those that are coming from Power BI background, you can use your data flow gen 2 to achieve the same data transformation from your bronze layer to your silver layer and also your gold layer. So I'll copy the first code cell for this notebook. Then I'll do Control C, then come back into my fabric environment, then I'll edit this, then I'll do Control A and do Control V to replace it. But now it's very important that you look at the file path where your CSV file is located. Other than other than that, I think you are good to go. So for in my case now, my file path is actually under files and it's under bronze. But because what I used earlier was lowercase b, so I'm just going to change this to uppercase B, and then I will run my cell. I will run my cell. For the first time, it's always going to take longer time to run. So once this is run, then I can go to my GitHub repository and fetch the second line of code, which is this. So I'll fetch this. So once I copy what is in this notebook, then I can go back to my fabric environment, and then I can add a new code cell. You see that this is running successfully already, so I can add a new code cell. Then I can then paste what I copied last. Now, but it is important that you are sure that what you copied is copied correctly, because some parts here has already been cut off. So I'll go back to my GitHub repository and then I will try to copy this once and for all this time and copy it well. So now that I've copied the code, I will go back into my fabric environment, and I will just highlight it and paste the full code now. Then I will add this another code cell, go back to my GitHub environment and copy the code again for this part, so which is from here. So I will copy this. No worry, I'm still going to explain what each line of this code is doing. So I'll copy this also, then I'll go back to my fabric environment, then I'll paste it. Then lastly, we'll go there one more time and copy the next line of code, which is this. So all this code is just to transform our data into silver layer, which is a validated layer following this medallion architecture. So I'll go back to my fabric environment. Now I'm already here, so add another code cell, then I will do Control V. So what I will now do once I have all this code here in fabric environment is that I'm going to run all of it, and then I will expect that it's going to load our CSV file into our lakehouse. So briefly, before I run this code now, I just want to explain what is going and what each line of code is doing. So this first code cell is just to create a schema for us, like a column for the data that we are ingesting from the CSV file. And then, like I said, when I was doing ingestion with Notebook, you see that we have asterisk here just to indicate that every CSV file in this file path is being ingested. And then this line of code is to display the first 10 rows of the data. So we had already run this first cell, and that is what we have here. You can see the column headers, and then also we can see this the schema has been defined with their various data types. And then we scroll down now, and then on this part of the code is just to add extra column to it, called is flag column, created, and then modified column also. So these are the various logic to implement that. So if other date is less than this particular date is true, otherwise false. Then created date is current timestamp, and then you update those columns. So once you add this column now, then it's now important that you now define your schema again, because there is 3 extra column now which are not in the schema that we defined the first time here. So you have those 3 extra column, which is modified, created, and is also flag. So you define this column, and then this part is now going to update what you have done and also write the data from those CSV file into data lake table. So I'm going to click on run all, and then it's going to run all of this cell for me, and then we now have our silver layer. So we are now on the second layer. The first layer being the CSV file that we uploaded. Then the next layer is the silver layer, which is the data table that this code is going to ingest for us. So once that is done, then we can refresh the table here, and then we'll expect that we'll have a second layer, which is your silver layer. So I'm running into error here because the name of the lakehouse that I used this notebook for the first time was sales. But in this case now, the name of our lakehouse is Medallion Lakehouse. So I just have to adjust this code briefly here and add Medallion LH, so which is the name of our lakehouse. So once this part is corrected now, then we can now run this code again. The medallion be the schema that we are defining, and then the sales will be the name of the table that we are writing in data table. So that is why this code is running into error. Then of course we'll check that if there is no other part where you have that medallion or the same problem here again, so we can then run all once more. So now all our code cell have run successfully. Then I can come to table here, then I can expand this. So but since I've expanded and nothing is showing, I just have to refresh and see if the silver layer has been written for us. So now we have a silver layer, so you can click on it to preview, or you go back to your medallion lake house, and then you can click on this to see what our data looks like. So this is what we have. This is our silver layer. So the last part now is to also transform this silver layer further into our gold layer. So once we transform into gold layer, then it is in the best state that is available for any workload, be it BI workload or even machine learning workload. So this is our silver layer. So the final layer is the gold layer. So to do that, we are going to create a new notebook. But before that, let's just rename this first notebook. So which is going to be, to rename that, you just click on this place and then you silver layer notebook, or any name that you want to give it, and then you can just click on enter. So we can go back to our lake house now. So in our lake house, we are going to open another notebook, called a new notebook. So on this new notebook now, we'll now go to our our GitHub repository, where you can find the resource that you can use or the code that you can use. So once our notebook is up, then we can start to copy and paste every one of them, and then that will help us transform the data into our gold layer. It will transform the data into gold layer. So I will go back to my GitHub repository now, where I can find the code for my gold layer. So this is the code for gold layer now. So I will copy each and every one of them, and then I will use it to transform this data into gold layer. So I will copy the first code cell. So I will do Control C, go back into my Fabric environment. I will just replace that, Control A, Control V. Then I'll add a new code cell. Then go to my GitHub environment again, copy the entire code, copy the entire code. I will copy the entire code, then go back into my Fabric environment. So I will repeat that for every step all the way till every part of the code is copied from my GitHub environment. So I am done copying all the code from my GitHub repository, but just like the other time where I ran into error, I need to adjust this part of the code to reflect the name of my new lakehouse, which is Medallion, Medallion LH. Then I will just need to check through this line, every line of the code again, to be sure there is no other part I need to adjust, and also explain what each code cell is doing. So this is to ingest from our medallion lake house, and then this is just to create a dimension table for our date table. So this dimension table now is referencing the date table from our silver layer to create various column for other dates, for day, month and year, and then year and month also. So that is what this line of code is doing. Then we need to now, so that is what this line of code is doing. So it's just to define the schema for the gold date table. So we now use this line of code to do the actual getting the date table. So this one is adding the other date. Now we are dropping the duplicate because our date table must contain distinct value. So it's dropping duplicates from other dates, and then we just add all these other columns. So then this is going to display the first 10 rows. So this one too, we are defining that we are cleaning it with this, and then also we now create our dim customer table. So we define the schema, and then also once we define the schema, this part is splitting the customer name into their first name and their last name, and then we now use this one also to create the customer ID. So we use it to create the customer ID. Then the next part now is also to write that table into our lake house, then on and on like that. So the same thing is repeated for our product table. We do that, create product ID using this part of the code, and then we also do some cleaning and tidying up of things here, and the same thing applies for this also. So that is what this entire part of the code is doing, and then this will create our good layer for us. So let me just run all this code cell now, and then we expect to have multiple data tables here, which is going to be our good layer of the tables. So our cell is going to take a while to run, but I'm sure that it's going to run to the very last code cell. So once it's done, we'll see our tables in here. So now our notebook is done running. So I will just refresh this table folder and see if we now have our good layer. So now, boom, we have our good layer. So we can go back into our lake house and see how all of these tables look like. So before we proceed and do the same thing with data flow gen 2, we are going to create a semantic model or a data model or a data set based off from what we have in our lake house now, which is this. So we now have our good customer table, which shows all of this. We have good date table also, which shows the date table. We also have good product table, which is this. Then we also have good fact table also, which is this. So now we have our three layers. The first layer being your bronze layer, the silver we uploaded. Then we use a notebook to create our silver layer, which is this. And then we use notebook to create the most sophisticated layer, which is the gold layer. So we now have 5 data lake table in our lake house. So we are going. So right here from our lake house, we can create a new semantic model which can be used for data reporting. So I will click on new semantic model. So from this semantic model now, I'm going to pick the tables that I'm going to use, which of course is going to be our good data, which is date table, customer table, product table, then also my fact table. Then I can call it sales model, and I can click on confirm. So I now have a semantic layer that can be used for the purpose of reporting in my lakehouse now. So I will just give it time for this semantic model to be created. So once it's created, then you can use it for your reporting needs. So this is the table that I have. So let me collapse this. So this environment is actually very familiar. We have two tabs here. We have table tab. We also have model tab. So let's just stay on table tab, and then we can now do our data modeling. Of course, following the star schema architecture, we can do that. So we need to find our fact table, bring it right here, and then we have our date table also. So this is our fact table somewhere around here. Then we can use other date from date table to actually create a relationship with this. So other dates here and other dates here. So I will just drag and drop other dates on other dates. So it's going to create a table, a relationship for me. So I'm using other dates and other dates here. So which is one to many, so which I'm good with. Now this preview is not available yet, so I can just click on OK. So that will create a relationship between the fact table and the date table for me, and then we have it. Then the same thing between our fact table and our customer table. So I'll use my customer ID to create a relationship with this. So then I can, this preview is still not available also. So then I can scroll up, then I click on OK. So the same thing applies for my products table. So I can use my product ID to model product table to this. So this is item ID now. So I'll carry this and drop it here. So then I have the same thing. Then I scroll up, then I do OK. So we can now use this semantic model for our data reporting. We can use this semantic model for our data reporting. So before we leave here, let's quickly rename this our notebook best practice. So which is the notebook that we use to change it to good layer. So that this we'll call this one good, call this notebook, we can call this notebook now good layer notebook. We can call it good layer notebook. So that's it. So now we now have semantic model that we can use for our reporting needs. So let's go back to our workspace and see what we have done so far. So this is what we have done so far. Now this is actually our semantic model. So we need to rename this and call it sales model. So I'll rename it back. So I'll rename this. So it should be sales semantic model, which is going to be sales semantic model. So we can click on save. Then we can now come back to this notebook 2 and also rename it accordingly. So to do that also you can come to settings. So under settings that will be this will be um, code layer notebook, and then that will be it. So now we are going to proceed and recreate the exact same thing using our data flow gen 2. So it is up to you, either you want to use notebook or you want to use data flow gen 2, so depending on your skill set.